out for work at Raquel's, and the whole world's press was there, and I will never forget that night of driving round my normal route, driving into Market Square. If you've ever been anywhere where there's loads of paps, where they've got all of the broadcasting trucks and all of this going on, that was what it was like, and we were like, oh my God. And then I got out of the car and we went round the back, but as we can see out the door, they've got leaflets of Leah Betts in a coma being handed to people at the door. Obviously nobody was coming in that night, so we went in as normal and we were brought upstairs. It's a vague memory, but I remember being told, we went upstairs and basically went, look, it's going to be really on top tonight, there's going to be undercover police in the club, just don't say anything. Like, righto. Nobody came to the club that night. The only people in there was a couple of dodgy undercover police officers, which like, might as well have had their uniform on, do you know what I mean? It was like, really? But it was a really sad night. It was a really sad night in so many ways. First of all, you've got this young girl that we believed it was in a coma, was in a coma at that time, or just died, we didn't know, but is in a coma. That's all so tragic as it is, but this is also our heart and soul night, and we've been having all of this fun. So suddenly what was great and good for us at the time, suddenly everything had changed. Everything had changed. And I remember going into the club and standing there, and obviously, you know, there was nobody to serve, so not got anything to do. And by 12 o'clock, you know, the club opens at 10, and by 12 o'clock it was like, we already knew it was the end. And I remember they played a tune and said, right, we're going to be starting at 12, and we were just like, yeah. And probably John has put on, I wish I could remember, maybe John will remember, maybe I'll ask him, maybe he probably won't remember, but whatever song it was, I just remember all of us going onto the dance floor, this empty dance floor, and hugging and crying. It just felt, it was like we knew it was the end, and it was all really, really sad. And then we left, and that was the last time I ever went in Raquel's until I went into it, derelict, for a Sky documentary. That was the last time I ever went near Raquel's, the last time I ever went, you know, last time I ever saw any of the people, you know, Perfect Virtue carried on, but the stigma and everything that had gone on obviously was, you know, it changed everything in the Essex scene. And so, you know, went home that night and, you know, we felt like it was the end. We didn't know, obviously, at that point, but it felt like everything had changed. And then it was as simple as that. It was like, everybody was like, are we going to be raided? You know, what's going to happen? Are we going to be raided? Are we going to be spoken to? Is anything going to be happen? And it was just, everybody was on the lowdown. Just like, everything was on top, so everybody else was on the lowdown. And that was that. And then, what are we talking, two weeks later and 2 days? The Essex boys got shot dead in a Range Rover. And my cousin pulled out of that area that morning. He saw it all going off, like with the once the police were there.
At the actual site in Rettendon.
At the actual site in Rettendon, yeah. I didn't know that until recently, but I didn't know these guys. I didn't know anything about that. That had happened. It was like, oh my God, what next? And that was it for me at that point. And it was only when dispatches got in contact with us a few months later that I started to speak about it in any way or ever spoke about it, because nobody spoke to us. And this is a really, really key thing, like I want to point out at the time. all of this is going on around the club, but nobody spoke to us. Nobody spoke to the barmaid. Nobody spoke to the DJ. We were never questioned by the police. We were never asked a thing about, did we even know Leah? You know, they were handing out pictures of her at the door, but they're not going to ask her about her, ask us about anything. Everything in that club was controlled by the head door.
So can I just jump in there? So,
yeah.
With the door situation, obviously, it's sort of well known that Tony Tucker ran all the doors. Did you ever see Tony Tucker, or did you know, was you aware that he ran that door or anything? No? Not something that was in my knowledge. What I did know at the time was that a certain amount of clubs in the area, right up to the East End, were run by the same door. And that where it was Club UK in Wandsworth, Epping Forest Country Club. We used to go off at Epping Forest Country Club. Epping Forest Country Club, Rackhouse, and what was the other one? Hollywood's Romford.
Hollywood's Romford. Hollywood's Romford.
So as far as you was aware then, it was run by the head doorman as such, or that's all you saw?
All we knew was the club's run by the door. The door controls everything. The door controls everything. And that's all we knew. And, you know, if anybody knows anything about Clubland, the door does control anything. Nothing goes on in that club unless the door let it. But that's what bouncers are supposed to be for. But if they're letting bad stuff happen and they're profiting out of it, or, you know, all of that kind of thing, that's how it was going down, and how doors have been run and all of that kind of thing. You know, I don't need to go into that. People know all about how this has gone on in the history of the underworld and the history of Clubland. So it was as simple as that at Rackhouse. It was all run by the door. I didn't even know the manager. I don't remember anything like that. And that was how it was. So when everything happened, there wasn't anybody to go, oh, can I call my manager and find out what's going on? It didn't work like that. It was just like, as I said, you get told, don't speak to anybody, you know, don't say anything to anybody. That was the end of that. And then you're all left and nobody's ever spoken to again. And I'll never forget, because the guy's still on Channel 4, or still on the news, I can't remember what his name is now, I have to remind myself. But anyway, the guy that did dispatches, and you can see it on the little videos, he was really lovely and he was doing his job. He was an investigative journalist, and it was a full Channel 4 team and everything. And of course I wanted to do it because, you know, I've been acting since I was younger, and I truly wanted to be on the stage and get into TV, as many girls do, and all of this kind of thing at that time. So, I can be on Channel 4, oh yeah. But then I was like, can't say too much, can't we? Don't want to get into trouble. Number one, we weren't going to grass on anybody. We weren't grasses, and there wasn't any, we didn't think we knew anything to grass about, really. But obviously we're not going to go, oh yeah, he's the drug dealer, and he's a drug dealer, and he's that. And you know, when people talk about drug dealers, it's, you know, there's a big scale of 50 shades of grey of drugs and drug dealers, and all of that kind of thing. So that that side of it, as to the fact that nobody ever spoke, I don't believe that anybody ever spoke to the right people, and that all witnesses, and I now know that all witnesses, actual, like Leah Betts and all of this, were being intimidated to be silenced. And it's like, you be quiet, don't say anything about anybody, nobody get into trouble. So when I went and did dispatches, I did play the innocent barmaid, and not that I wasn't the innocent barmaid, I was.
Sorry, I'll just ask a quick question there. So when you say everyone was sort of being intimidated and told to be quiet, was this by sort of the door, or sort of police are we talking there? The door. The door. The people involved. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I had no connection with the police in any way, apart from what had happened to me a few weeks beforehand, which I hadn't linked at the time. There was literally, yeah, they said there was undercover police in there,
It's like, oh, for what? Nothing's going on now tonight, is it? And it was obvious, you know, nobody's going to. And that was it. I never had any instances with the police or anything, and the only person that ever asked us any questions on an authoritative or upper level was the guy from Dispatches in Channel 4, and nobody spoke about it, and of course, you know, that was the whole scenario. And then what happened next with the boys, and I'm going to be really honest here as to, obviously anybody shooting anybody is the worst possible thing you can do, but whoever that hit person was, it wasn't doing it alone. You know, if there's anything to be said about this whole case, is that people involved, of course they don't want to be found out, of course they don't want to be held accountable, and of course they'd much rather send out manipulation and put a big fanfare and make, you know, that's the truest sense of the narcissist. The truest sense of the narcissist is they're going to send you off in the other direction with pure manipulation, so that nobody comes looking, and also because you've got, what it leaves is a massive ball of confusion. Is that person telling the truth? Is that person telling the truth? Is that person lying? Is that? Yeah. And it all just ends up in a like, don't know what to believe. I can't cope. Oh, let's not worry about it anymore. And that's where I feel that this whole narrative of the story is. And one thing I want to say to everybody is this: when you catch people out lying, and when you've got them banged to rights and they're lying, and then you catch them out lying again, and you catch them out lying again, don't ever believe them. Don't give them the benefit of the doubt, or maybe they're saying that. Their word is not their bond. Their word is not the truth. And as an older person now, one thing I will say to everybody as well is, people and words lie, but energy doesn't. Look people in the eye. People, if somebody won't get in the room, if somebody won't talk in the room, and somebody won't come in and go, right, let's get in the room and let's all talk in an open, honest, adult way. We're not all like, you did that, and you were not kids in the playground, and all the guys need to have grown up and it not be about, oh, I want to be right, or I want this to be, because that's not how stories go. If people really want the truth, then they need to speak to everybody involved, take on everybody's point of view, their knowledge, their truth, then look at it and balance it all up. Because if you're only talking to one side or those sides of the story,
one side, don't you?
Then you're never going to actually find out all of the rest. Now, sex, drugs and rock and roll is what this is all about. And not rock and roll, it's sex, drugs and the dance scene. Rock and roll is, you know, rock and roll is the same thing, it's just a different level of music. So it is sex, drugs and rock and roll, and it all goes together. And of course, when people do, that's the best way to put it, there is no sex without the girls. Guys want the girls. This is one of the ways that things are done. Exploitation of women and the exploitation of the female side of it. Oh, don't listen to her, she's a gold digger. How many times since I've been into that group gone, oh, she's just coming in here for a bit of promotion? And like, are we really going to go down this gold digger bullshit? Like, everybody needs to get paid, right? Like, you know, at the moment we're sitting here both giving our time for free because we care about the truth of things, and because we've got stories to tell, and this is what we're supposed to be doing. And it's not, you know, the whole don't listen to her, she's a gold digger, don't listen to her, she's just after attention, oh look, she's put on her, she's a digital creator.
Sounds to me like people worrying about what you might say. Is what
Much
it sounds
more like
to me.
that. Because, and that's the truth of it. And so, for me, it all ended there, and I went off and did loads of things and blah, blah, blah. But for me, this, you know, I'm still from Essex, but this whole Essex saga, after Dispatches, for me, it was something that had happened, and it always made me laugh at everybody's like treating Basildon like it's the Bronx. And it's like, if you've ever been to New York, guys, and you think you're gangsters, go to New York, walk down the Bronx, let's see how gangster you really are.
So, Sacha, can I fire a couple of random questions at you to finish? So, obviously, there's a lot more that you know or you've seen that we've spoke about today. And maybe another time we can get you on,
Definitely.
if we're lucky enough. But in your own opinion, do you think Mick Steele and Jack Rhymes are guilty, and they were obviously convicted of the murders? Do you think, in your own opinion, that is correct?
In my opinion, they're definitely not guilty of that. In my opinion, as obviously I wasn't there, in my opinion, yeah, that's definitely not the true story. And if it was, would we all be sitting here now?
No. And my final question for you, just in your own sort of personal opinion or feeling, there's so many different theories and different possibilities. Who do you think may have killed Pat, Tony and Craig?
I have no idea who pulled the shotgun, who pulled the gun. I 100% believe that they were set up by the person that was setting everybody up, and the manipulation. I do believe that there's a very strong chance that it all seems to make sense to me, it all seems to link, that it was a contract, and the Essex police knew, and the Essex police corruption. For me, at this stage, does it really matter who pulled the trigger? What matters is why this all happened, how it's all happened, and why Essex police don't want to talk about it, and why they don't want to investigate, and why certain people have never been brought into the room and not made, but under oath, severely questioned, how this intimidation can carry on. How can I come in after not knowing anything about, not being involved in any of this, being completely innocent on those bases? How can I come in, just say hi, and suddenly get intimidation, and you're the only person that's actually helped me to be able to get this story out? You know, you hit me up straight, like, early on, offered me, didn't pressurise me, didn't do anything like that, and going, oh, I really want you on. It was just, you know, an open, nice invite, which I really respect. And I really respect that, of when you're going, well, you know, I would like to tell my story and I would like help to do it, but I'm on my own here. And when you've got people with such a lot of criminal activity and such a lot going on, and they're suddenly starting to go in on the attack on you, and they'll use anything. You know, they'll use anything to try and hurt you. And
sort of discredit what you're saying as well.
They'll discredit everything you say, and if that doesn't work, they'll go and try and find other people that they can gang up with, and smear campaigns and all of this kind of intimidation tactics. And the bottom line is, and one thing I want to say here is, people need to understand what grooming is. We are in 2024. I didn't know what grooming was back then. But why is it me? Why is it I'm sitting here and I'm not? Why is it they wanted me? Why is it that I wasn't putting out, so they still want me? That's how they do the manipulation to the pretty girl, or the, you know, and I'm the last person to talk around going, oh, you're so pretty, because I'm not like that. But it is on that, this is about exploitation. And sex and drugs and prostitution and grooming and all of this thing goes across the board. And if we are going to make a difference for the future, people need to understand how this abuse of power that is coming from people above, and it's not just men. And I didn't understand it at all, and it's actually my husband that's helped me to be able to understand how it works, because he's worked in social care work, and he's had to do all of this on training as well and all of this. So I have a much higher level, I have a level of understanding of how that works now. And I think this is, it is part of the story.
So just to step in there quickly, so for your point of view, you think instead of being blinkered on that one thing, there's a lot more areas that need to be looked at?
Yeah, 100%, yeah. Of, what people were doing before this all happened. Well, I know it's all very, what happened on the day they died? Everybody go, what happened on the day they died? But I do believe that if you are able to go back and take it back, everything links. And when you take it back, and instead of going like, I've just got, what happened on that day, if you go back and you link of who's doing what, how's this working, what's not being said, talk to the people that weren't spoken to. I asked in the group the other day, has anybody spoken to Leah Betts' friends?
No one.
No, and it's like, obviously they were intimidated at the time, and they were really young. This is like 4 kids that have seen an awful incident of whatever's gone on. They should have all been supported, and they were all like taken into court and have you been dealing her drugs? I mean, really, let's get real. A load of 18-year-olds who've got 1 pill, and they're all gonna, a couple of pills, and they're being pulled into court with the world press looking at them.
Yeah, you've got all the real dealers sitting there doing whatever they're doing.
Exactly. So you can see how this manipulation is, and I do believe that if everybody was kind of to take stock, take it back, and to really look at the whole picture, and the whole picture of what was going on beforehand, who the actual people were involved beforehand, and how the death of Leah Betts was used, and that there was intimidation going on back then with all the youngsters. And here I am, 50 years old.
Still going on today. Popped
in to the group in November, and the kind of silencing, and I've not had any support to be able to help me do this. And when you're dealing with this kind of stuff, I tell you why most girls don't say nothing.
Yeah,
too much. You've got to be really strong. When you've got, serious big guys and this kind of a level of being made difficult to say anything. I hadn't said anything and it had already come in. So fuck knows what's going to happen after this.
It caused a storm anyway.
So it caused a storm, but I would just like to say to everybody that we're all a long way past that, 30 years, and everybody needs to start acting like adults. Anybody that is trying to silence anybody that's doing that, they're guilty, as far as I'm concerned. And because everybody should be able to speak out, and we should not be here 30 years later
still
with
going over it, yeah.
One guy who's 81 years old in a category A. I mean, how that can even be possible, I just don't know. And many of the culprits that were fully involved in this, banking and walking around, giving it a large one. Yeah. It shouldn't be like this. And I do generally think that if everybody got behind the campaign to hold Essex Police accountable from the start, because whatever's going on, they've got a duty to serve and protect us, not screw it up, be corrupt, and be getting rid of it, people.
Yeah.
And I'm not hesitating on this because of this, the abuse of power by police. They have the power to sign you off dead and nobody care. Like, they have that power to, when they turn up, go, oh, nothing to see here, move along.
Yeah.
Nothing to see here, move along. Nothing to see, move. And what? Who gave them that God-given right? Really, you know, and the amount of desensitising and the amount of problems there are with so many deaths, so many people losing life, mental health, suicide, all of this, and then who gets called? The dodgy police officer who's domestically abusing his wife at home, or, you know, like we've seen with David Carrick. The police force is the worst problem in our country. It is the problem, it is the root of all problem. It's the reason why nothing gets better. Because when they're bad, and when they're not doing things right, and when they don't care if you live or die, you're screwed. Because you don't need, until you need the police, then you don't worry about it. You know, 4 years ago, I suddenly needed help, and I called them, and Sussex police have done, literally treated me like shit, destroyed my faith in all of the police force, destroyed, I've never known anybody so awful, and how they've treated since my brother-in-law disclosed sexual abuse, and then was found dead 6 months later. And everything that has happened since then, I have no faith in the police, and I really do want the police to give me some faith in them. And because how many women are calling, like, the police have been so bad. This whole case is all down to, you know, loads of corruption and loads of informants and all of this going on. And then when you can't trust the police, and we're now 30 years later, and the all the police force have got murderers in, you know, paedophiles, you name it, it is all, and it's coming out constantly. So when you're, it's all very well reading it in the paper, but when you're the you know, the girl that's been raped, and you go to the police station, and 1% of rape victims, it's going 1% of rape victims, it's going any further. So if we're talking about 100 girls that go to the police that have been raped, we're saying they've been raped, and there's very few that would bother if they hadn't. Let's be serious. And then your 1% is actually getting put forward, and less than that is even actually getting to trial. Now, I know it's difficult to, and I know it's just on this particular crime of rape, but what has happened in the last 30 years is that culture of drugs, abuse, that kind of thing, get them fucked and then we can do what we like, has exploded, and it's worse than it ever was. Nobody wants that for their kids, nobody wants that for themselves. All of the people, you know, all of this going on is going on because there's no line, because when the criminals know that they can get away with it. The rapists know. If 1% of rapists are getting, then of course 99% know that they're going to get away with it all the time.
And keep doing it.
And it's the same with the police, the corruption, you know, and I mean from murders, from all of these kind of things. If murderers know that it's easy to just write them off and they're going to be able to get away with it, these criminals know that they can get rid of that person and, oh, you know, they've got somebody on the inside, so there's nothing to see here. Nobody's safe. Nobody's safe. And this is really, you know, I know there's the fights between, you know, all the bants and all the stuff going on between Colton and Bernie and Orla and Brian and all and David and everybody that wants to get involved, all this. I think we can all agree that the police are the worst problem in our society. They're not looking after anybody. So if we could all actually like come together on that point, and go
like, rather than each other.
Let's pull this out. Let's make it worldwide, national awareness of what has actually gone on and how. Because believe you me, only people in the watching Rise of the Foot Soldier and blah blah blah, I mean the groups are actually have any real understanding or any knowledge, because of the wider public don't really know. But I tell you what, the wider public are 100% at the moment on the fact of calling the police out for what they are. This is Essex police corruption. There's loads of loads of corruption going on through. And what is corruption? Well, it's people taking backhanders, people on the payroll, people turning a blind eye, you know, making more money, and all of these. And the police are always talking to criminals. Yeah, and I'm not tarring every police officer with the same brush. Don't worry about, you know, I'm not. I genuinely want to feel safe in our society, and when the police make you feel the opposite of that, and when you realise how much wrongdoing is, and they still won't hold their hands up and go, oh yeah, this did happen. Well, if the police aren't going to hold their hands up, why do they expect anybody else to?
Yeah, that's right.
You know, so yeah.
Right, so shall we start winding it up there? Thank you ever so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you very much, Lee.
Hopefully we'll be able to get you back for a little bit more info at some point.
I'd love to. Yeah, definitely. I'd love to.
Thank you, Sacha.
No problem.